So in this video, we're going to go over some of the cons of air frying, and we'll talk about some of the typical things that people are up in arms about, and we'll kind of discuss why some of those are not as bad as people may make you think. But we're also going to go over some significant problems that nobody's talking about, and are the reasons that I stopped using my air fryer on a daily basis. Now, before somebody jumps into the comments and says, "I done using air fryer for years and I lost 358 pounds. And as excited as I am about your weight loss there, we need to understand that there are some good sides of using an air fryer, but we want to understand the whole situation. We want to look at the downsides too. So one of the biggest benefits is that if somebody is using deep frying methods a lot, when you go to an air fryer, you're removing all of those seed oils that are involved in that normal frying process. And these are one of the worst things that we put into our bodies as a human. So when you remove those and frying in those oils, you're really getting a great benefit to your health when you're switching to this air frying method. Here's the problem. This air frying situation made frying foods very simple and convenient. Most people were not frying foods in their home on a daily basis. They don't have a deep fryer. They got to go to some place to get their fried foods. So now, all of a sudden, we can fry foods very easily, very conveniently, and a lot of people started to use this as a misguided view of what they should be doing. Everybody says, hey, this air frying is a lot more healthy, so they started using that as their main cooking method. Now we have the ability to create some of these other troubles that we're going to talk about. So don't view it necessarily as air fryers are evil, but the fact that a lot of people are now eating fried food and thinking, I can just have some fried cheese sticks and french fries every day, and it's healthy now. So we need to actually be reasonable when we're looking at the foods that we're consuming. So one thing that people talk a lot about, and they're like, stay away from the air fryers, are using all these non-stick surfaces that contain all these forever chemicals that go into your food and go into your body, and they call them forever chemicals because they stay in the body and create all kinds of havoc. And this is true, but you can also get a lot of different air fryers that have non-stick surfaces that do not contain forever chemicals. You can get stainless steel air fryers that don't contain these non-stick chemicals. So there's ways to get around that. And a lot of people talk about all these VOC emissions that when you're cooking like this go into the air, and when you inhale them they can create a lot of health issues. But a lot of cooking methods can do that. But I'll link some studies below, and we're going to talk about some of these other studies here, and I'll have links in the description below in case you want to dig into these a little bit more. But some of these studies show that other cooking methods can be even worse for this. So that, I don't feel like that's a reason not to use an air fryer. And another thing people complain a lot about with air fryers is the acrylamide that can be formed in the foods, and this is a chemical compound that comes about when you cook starches at a higher temperature. But the reality is that cooking in an air fryer creates a lot fewer acrylamide than you would if you were deep frying that food. And people get concerned about this just because it's associated with cognitive issues like dementia issues and even the big C word. So it's not something we want to bring in a lot, but again, if a person has an air fryer and it's very easy for them to fry things, they may be cooking these starches at higher temperatures a lot more often than they would have before. So that's kind of the problem that I kind of view that. But let's look at lipid oxidation issues, and we'll look at this study on impact of air frying on cholesterol and fatty acid oxidation in sardines. And it appears that when you're cooking some fish and some other foods that have specific fats in them in an air fryer, it has the ability to create a lot of oxidation in what they call cholesterol oxidation products, or COPs. And this has the ability to create a lot of inflammation in the digestive tract. And here's where I start to wake up and I'm like, hey, wait, what'd you say there? Because I don't like when things cause problem with digestion. And what goes on is when you create a lot of inflammation in that digestive tract, it can affect our MMC function, or migrating motor complex, that is a system in the digestive tract that is meant to kind of clear things out in between meals. So it's clearing out undigested debris, but also bacteria that really shouldn't be there in the small intestine. As long as we can clear that out, then they don't cause trouble. But when this MMC is not functioning correctly, now we don't clear out that bacteria and we can create a SIBO issue, which can lead to a wide variety of health issues. I'm not going to get too deep into that in here, but I'll have a link in the description below for our video on why your MMC stopped working. and you can check that out if you want to learn more about that. But let's look at the real reason that I really stopped using my air fryer a lot, and it has to do with glycation, and especially advanced glycation end products, or AGEs as they're called. And AGEs can occur endogenously where they are made inside the body. This is very common to see with someone who's a type 2 diabetic or has high blood sugar issues, because this glycation is really about sugars binding to proteins or fats. So when sugar's high, this happens a lot more. But it can also happen from exogenous sources where we're bringing it in on the food that we're consuming. So either the food, because of the way that it was processed or cooked, can contain a lot of AGEs, and then we're bringing those into the system too. So the more we're bringing into the system, the more we can create trouble. And this issue is seen very frequently in issues like cognitive problems and dementia and Alzheimer's and cardiovascular disease, diabetic retinopathy, chronic kidney issues, osteoarthritis, and a lot of skin issues that can be chronic as well. So this can create a lot of trouble, and we want to understand the level of AGEs that are coming in the body, because the body has the ability to deal with these AGEs. It has the ability to remove them, but today's food and the way that we're eating now is really creating a greater burden than the body can deal with in a lot of cases. So these come about most often because of high dry heat cooking, like grilling or broiling or air frying or deep frying. So when we're cooking in this way, especially when everybody says, oh, this air frying is healthy, now they're going to say, oh, well, I'm going to eat more real food, I'm doing the right thing, but I'm going to air fry everything because it's so easy and it's so convenient. Now they're really elevating all these AGEs. The more they cook that food and we create all that Maillard effect that creates all that great flavor, the more AGEs that we're creating. So one problem that we want to think about is that it has the ability to cause trouble for protein digestion. So when you're creating a lot of AGEs in the proteins that you're consuming, that cross-linking of those proteins that stiffens everything up, like in your connective tissues and all these things where it can create trouble in the body, it does that in the proteins that you're consuming too. And now those proteins become harder for the body to break down and access all of the amino acids and nutrients that the body needs to use as building blocks and rebuilding tools for the body. So we want to understand that that can be a problem when it comes to protein, but what we're really doing is we're really magnifying the whole aging process. Whether we're talking about internal organs, how the body is working, or external skin issues, we're just going to see a lot of aging when we're increasing these AGEs. So I was using an air fryer like a maniac. Everybody said it was healthy. Oh, this is better than frying. So I was creating all of these AGEs and creating some trouble for myself. But here's the real kicker. Let's look at this study on dietary advanced glycation end products interacting with the intestinal epithelium. And they say this decreased expression of tight junction proteins can be indicative of development of leaky gut, which was also suggested by a modest increase of plasma LPS levels. And in this study, they found that the AGEs have the ability to disrupt that lining in your intestinal tract that keeps all of the bad stuff out of the bloodstream. So the more AGEs we have in the system, the more of these receptors that the body will make for these AGEs. And every time that AGEs connect with these receptors, it creates this cascade of inflammation that has the ability to damage structures around it. So when we're doing this in the intestinal lining, we have the ability to create this leaky gut that everybody's talking about these days. When we have this leaky gut issue, undigested food particles can get into the bloodstream, and now the body's looking at that like it's an invader, and we go to war against a peanut butter sandwich. So we really don't want these leaky gut issues or these autoimmune type problems coming about just because we were cooking in a convenient way. So the reality is that most people should be able to use an air fryer some of the time. They should be able to deal with the AGEs that they're creating with this air frying method. But some people really should not. If somebody's a type 2 diabetic and they're creating all of this glycation anyways, then adding cooking methods, they're like, oh, I'm going to eat real food. I'm going to do the right thing. I'm going to bring my blood sugar down. But now they're creating AGEs in a whole different way. So they're just trading one problem for another problem. So look at your situation and kind of figure out, okay, I need to understand air frying is not always healthy. That doesn't mean that I can never use it, but I might need to be a little bit more reasonable with what I'm doing depending on the issues that my body is dealing with now. And remember, I'm not a doctor. I'm not giving anybody medical advice. If your doctor's telling you to cook everything in an air fryer, I'm not telling you not to do that, but I'll have the links to these studies in the description below so you can dig through those a little bit more and figure out the right questions to ask your doctor. So for me, I might be using my air fryer once or twice a month, but I'm not using it once or twice a day like I used to. And know that there's also cooking tricks that you can do to reduce the level of AGEs in the food that you're cooking, even if you are using an air fryer. So we'll have links in the description below for our videos on stop these 3 cooking habits and food combinations that are destroying your brain that will kind of help you understand some things that you can do to bring these AGEs down a little bit. But if you want to understand more about these digestive issues, and I go over some more studies about how this can create leaky gut and other digestive problems, you can jump over right now and check out our video on your kitchen is destroying your gut lining. I can't wait to hear about your results.